I want to bring in my panel, Robert Costa, national political reporter for The Washington Post and moderator, of course, of Washington Week on PBS. Cynthia Oxney, former federal prosecutor. Bob Bianchi, a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney. Bret Stephens, an op-ed columnist for The New York Times. And my dear friend, Eddie Glaude, a Princeton University professor. Roberto Costa, to you first. How would you describe the way the White House, or what their strategy is, in response to all these requests?
They're approaching a subpoena fight. At the moment, they're trying to rebuff Democratic requests for documents, for possible testimony from White House officials and others around President Trump. But if the Democrats in the House do not get what they want, this could lead to a subpoena fight, a fight that then could extend into the courts. For now, the White House is trying to argue the Democrats don't have a right to security clearance information because it's classified at some level and it's complicated and sensitive. But Democrats are really looking for the president's conduct with regard to those security clearances. And so they may be able to try to have a battle over the extent of what they can find document-wise, but still ask those tough questions about what the president did with regard to his daughter, Ivanka Trump, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
Cynthia, technically, how much can the president hold back by using executive privilege? And if he does, what can Democrats actually do about it?
Well, this is the mystery of executive privilege. Nobody really knows, because it's not litigated that much, because usually people come to some agreement about it. My guess is we're going to have...
I'm pretty sure we're not going to see many agreements.
We're not going to see a lot of agreements here. So what's going to happen is finally the courts are going to have to flush it out. So what the White House is going to stonewall, and eventually it'll go to the courts, and I predict it's going to go all the way up, because there just isn't a lot of case law on it. Well, it's kind of shocking how little case law there is.
But if you're the president, you will drag things out. It'll take time, and that's a positive. Bob, I want to read part of what Politico wrote specifically about the White House's plan to not share the president's tax returns. They write this: the strategy will hinge on an argument that politically motivated Democrats will inevitably leak Trump's tax information, a felony in and of itself, if the IRS hands over the documents. So officials will say that because Democrats cannot be trusted to keep the documents private, they shouldn't get them in the first place. Yeah. So that's the argument, and that argument could apply not just to the tax returns, to loads of documents.
Right. You can make that argument in the context of any of the politics, including all the investigations of Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration. That is not a legal basis to deny it. Executive privilege, in my opinion, will fail because there were two lower court decisions, both in the Bush administration and in the Obama administration, where there was a lengthy fight over executive privilege with the subpoena power that Congress clearly has a right as far as oversight is concerned, and they lost those arguments in the courts. Now, it may take years to litigate, and those didn't go to appeal, but ultimately, Stephanie, what they did was they came to a compromise, which I assume is going to happen here. Legally, Congress is on the right grounds legally here. Practically, it's going to take forever.
Bret, I need to read you a piece from a New York Times article that came out yesterday, specifically talking about the hush money payoffs that Michael Cohen paid. When I read this, I'm like, this cannot even be for real. Some people close to Mr. Trump have privately predicted that he will ultimately choose to seek a second term, in part because of his legal exposure if he's not president. Let's just talk about how twisted that is, okay? He would run because if he's a private citizen, he'll get indicted.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, yeah.
Well, I mean, of course that's the case, because he has
I'm searching for country first somewhere in here.
The whole architecture of the executive to protect him from criminal wrongdoing that he may be guilty of as a private citizen. I mean, I have said previously that I think that the payoffs to Stephanie Clifford and to Ms. McDougal were clear and willful violations of campaign finance laws,
so
and it carried on into his presidency, and they are impeachable offenses. But because they are impeachable, that means they're fundamentally being viewed in a political light. It's a different story once he becomes a private citizen.
I'm just going to become president again because I don't want to get indicted. That's twisted, Eddie.
Vladimir Putin has thought the same thing many times.
My goodness. Okay, Eddie, I know you don't want to answer this question, but I'm going to ask you. Democrats, they have to tread carefully here. There's a new Quinnipiac poll that says, by a margin of almost 2-to-1, Americans do not want Congress to begin the process of impeaching President Trump. If you are a Democrat right now, what do you do? Because I remember just before the midterms, our road warriors were out there, and as angry as many of them as voters were with the president, they're all saying, I just want a better life. I want health care. I want good schools. I want to get paid more money. Democrats are in a little bit of a tricky spot, no?
Yes, they are, but they have their constitutional responsibility. Right, so there are two things that we have to be mindful of. Obviously, we have to be mindful of the politics, and we have to understand that we're a representative democracy. And part of the idea of a representative democracy is that we have to ensure that the basic fundamentals of our country are in place. If it is the case that Donald Trump has, in fact, broken laws, if it is the case that he's the head of a criminal organization, if it is the case that that is proven, it has been proven that the Mueller report shows that he somehow was complicit with Russia's attempt to meddle in our elections, then it's their constitutional responsibility to impeach. And so I understand the politics. I understand that there are some folks out there, particularly those folks who are watching Fox News every day, that state news channel, that I understand that there's some folks who just want to worry about putting food on the table and keeping a roof over their heads and the like, but there are the fundamentals of the country that we have to be mindful of, and the Democrats need to understand that. So what's great, really quickly, what's really wonderful about this current moment is that we actually see the legislative branch actually doing its taking up its constitutional responsibility.
Bob, the Democrats have a strategy here to sort of coordinate all of these investigations and at the same time focus on issues that are kitchen table issues that matter to everyday Americans. Is Nancy Pelosi that person? Because when I watched the president speak yesterday and say these requests are a disgrace, we should be focused on infrastructure, I'm looking for someone to say, great, Mr. President, we've had infrastructure week, what, 7 times? What's your game plan?
At the moment, Democrats want to stretch out these investigations because they know they have yet to make a full case to the American people about their view of President Trump's alleged obstruction, his conduct in office, the whole aspect of Russian interference in the 2016 election. That's why House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is tamping down talk of impeachment proceedings. She wants the committee process to work its will over the course of the next year ahead of the 2020 election. And with regard to prescription drug reform and drug pricing and infrastructure, that has always been the talk of divided government, but so far, very few examples from the White House or from congressional Democrats of how they could actually forge a compromise on those big fronts.
Well, we're watching. All right, Cynthia, I want to move off Capitol Hill for a moment and take you to New York City because Michael Cohen's attorney, Lanny Davis, is calling for more investigations into that hush money paid to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. And I want to share this. New York State Attorney General and Manhattan District Attorney, based alone on these Trump personal hush money reimbursement checks to Cohen while he was president, probably have jurisdiction to launch an investigation of Mr. Trump. Indeed, arguably, the Manhattan DA could seek a criminal indictment of Trump while he is still president, since the DA is not literally subject to the Department of Justice memo.
That's right. And so, but in all of these things that are coming up today, the key word is state. Right? It's all the state charges, the state insurance charges, and anything having to do with campaign finance violations in the state. And that takes it out of the Department of Justice and provides some freedom. I do think, though, everybody is just waiting for the Mueller report. And that's why people are saying, no, we're not ready for impeachment. Because we've said 50,000 times, let's wait for the Mueller report. And so that's what Americans are saying. Let's wait for the Mueller report before they make a decision.
Well, we might not actually see it. Are all of these investigations, Bob, are they acting independently? Or are they coordinated in some way?
Stephanie, we're on the precipice of the best tactical questions being asked on TV right now. I have been saying...
I thought I've been asking them for the last 2 years.
No.
What are you been doing?
No, but about the state crimes. I have been saying from the beginning, it answers the political problem that the Congress has. Many of these offenses are state crimes. I was in charge of state crimes working in conjunction with the federal authorities. They can sit there, and we know the Attorney General is essentially called the Trump charity, for example. It's been disbanded. The language in that press release essentially could have been criminal charges. So they're not subject to the DOJ regulations, and moreover, they're not subject to the president's pardon power. If they are working in coordination with one another, while they may be able to escape with regard to the president, Jared Kushner, Ivanka, the Trump organization, these hush money payments, all these things implicate state crimes. Question is, kind of like what you just said rhetorically, bring it back to you, are they working in coordination with one another, or are they doing separate and independent investigations? I have no doubt the New York State Attorney General is all over this.
Oh, my goodness. All right, we're going to leave it there, but trust me, this topic isn't going anywhere. Up next.